We'll start off with the team that kept their name in the conversation of making the NCAA tournament, North Carolina. And that's exactly what they did this weekend. They earned their right to stay in the conversation. Not saying they're in. Not saying they're in the NCAA tournament. But they earned the right to still be in the conversation. And that's the most important thing. You still want to be in the conversation. 88-82 win. You heard the highlights there in the open. Going on the road to Syracuse, and the way they responded after a 20-point loss at Clemson was massive. How do you respond after a team where, let's be honest, or a game, we should say, where their fight was questioned? Not just by us being media. Hubert Davis seemed like he had questions, even though his words were different. The way he answered it said otherwise. You even had players questioning the fight in that loss. So it's not just a fabrication. It was a real thing. 3 things stood out to me in the win for North Carolina. First one, UNC played big. I know they're not a big team, air quotes. They played big, air quotes. But they actually used a bigger lineup than what we have seen over recent stretches over the last about 6 weeks. We actually saw R.J. Davis play in a point guard position more than Elliot Cadeau. Of the 8 guys that played for North Carolina, Elliot Cadeau, their starting point guard, played the fewest minutes. Now, there are some times where he had some foul trouble, but he was mostly on the bench, especially in the second half when North Carolina was really controlling the pace of the game. You had R.J. Davis handling the point. Ian Jackson as the 2 guard. We'll get to Ian Jackson here in a second. Drake Powell as your 3/small forward. Jalen Withers, who had a big day. Well, don't worry, we'll dive into Jalen Withers here in a second as well. Jalen Withers playing the 4, and then either Jalen Washington or Vin Allen Lubin playing the 5. That's a bigger lineup outside of the normal, what we've seen, 4 guards for North Carolina, where Ian Jackson in the 4-guard lineup is your second biggest guy on the floor at 6'4". But in the lineup I just gave you, he's actually the second shortest guy. Drake Powell, 6'6". Jalen Withers, 6'9". Vin Allen Lubin, 6'9". Jalen Washington, if he's in there in place of Lubin, is 6'11". So you got R.J. Davis, 6 foot, 6'1". Now you go 6'1" to 6'4" to 6'6" to 6'9" to 6'9" or 6'11". That's a much more competitive lineup in terms of size. R.J. Davis was asked post-game after the win against Syracuse, hey, is it time to scrap the 4-guard lineup?
For the past couple of games and weeks we've been having Seth at 4. That's kind of a hard task to ask Seth to play 1 through 4, right? So just to have Whit as another extra body with his height, his versatility, and athleticism will be huge for us. So we're going to need more of that from him. I think today was just a starter point.
So they say, yeah, it'd be nice. And it's difficult for Seth Trumbull to be asked to play the 4. That's just true. Seth Trumbull's 6'3". As great of a defender he is, that's a tough task for someone 6'3" to play the 4. To guard against someone who's 6'8" or 6'9". It's a difficult thing to do. Now, Jalen Withers had a big game. Best game of the season. 19 points, 6 rebounds, 3 blocks. Went 3 of 4 from behind the arc. We have seen Jalen Withers have his minutes cut drastically for a stretch, but he did come back in the starting lineup against Clemson, and he was rewarded with more playing time, and he rewarded his team and his head coach with one of his best games of the season. Here's Hubert Davis, the head coach of UNC, talking about the big game that Jalen Withers had.
I mean, he just came up huge for us, and he came up huge for us in ways that people, like, yes, he was rebounding and he hit threes for us, his finishes around the basket, but where he helped us out the most was defensively. Him with size, like they couldn't post up that position. And so we didn't have to double team that position, and that was because of Jay Witt. And so him being out there on the floor, I think he played his best game of the season, and I'm glad he played it tonight.
That's Hubert Davis on the Tarheel Sports Network post-game. Jalen Withers is not incapable as a three-point shooter. He could be a stretch 4. He's actually shooting 42.1% from three this season. I think actually he's the highest percentage on the team this year. But he doesn't shoot at the volume that some other guys do. But if you look at his final year in Louisville, which is the 2022-2023 season, he shot 41.7% from three while attempting three-pointers a game. So again, not incapable, and that's big when it comes to secondary scoring. But it has to be more consistent. Not saying he's got to be a 19-point guy every night. I think it's unreasonable to ask that of him for something that he's never done in his career. Then all of a sudden in the last 6 weeks of the season for his fifth year in college, he's all of a sudden going to be something that he's not. But playing a bigger lineup gives him more opportunities. The second thing, UNC needs Ian Jackson.
Yep.
Just simple as that. I was watching the game with my girlfriend on Saturday. He hit a three-pointer early in the game, and she said, "Oh, he's having a big day. He's having a big day." And he did. He had a massive day, over 20 points. First time we've seen him score double-digit points in quite a while. 15 games this season, Ian Jackson has scored double-digit points. He's played in 25 of 26 games. He missed the game against American, third game of the year, so he missed that game early in the year. But in 25 games he's played, he scored double-digit points in 15 of them. UNC is 10-5 in games where Ian Jackson scores double-digit points. When Ian Jackson scores single digits, 4-6. 4-6. Here's Hubert Davis again on the Tarheel Sports Network talking about Ian Jackson breaking out of his recent slump.
Well, I mean, he was in a nice rhythm, and he was taking good shots. And, he's a guy that can score at all three levels, whether it's from three, mid-range to the basket. And he was able to get some easy looks. And, being back in New York, I know this is far away from the Bronx, but I know he had a number of family and friends, and his best friend is Elijah Moore on Syracuse's team. And so really proud of him.
Let's see if he can carry that over. UNC doesn't have a lot of scorers. Yes, we've seen what R.J. Davis is capable of doing. R.J. Davis isn't afraid to create his own shot. R.J. Davis can do a lot of different things. Is he playing to the level he did last year? No, we've discussed that ad nauseum. But we know what he is capable of doing. Who's that next guy? Like it has to be Ian Jackson. It has to be. I know sometimes the bigger lineup might be at the sacrifice of maybe times of Elliot Cadeau and Seth Trimble, who are double-digit point per game players for you this season, but you have to adapt and evolve in order to make sure you're a best fit going down the rest of the stretch and hopefully into the postseason if you're North Carolina. But Ian Jackson has to be one of your top scorers night in and night out. I'll read the stat for you again. 10-5 in games where he has scored double-digit points. 4-6 in games where they haven't, or where he hasn't. Simple as that. Simple as that. And the third thing, especially when North Carolina goes to their small lineup, when they press, they were able to create a lot of scoring opportunities for themselves. We saw UNC at times, even after made free throws especially, they set up in a 1-2-1-1 press. And it flustered Syracuse, and so many times they did that, North Carolina did, with their smaller lineup, which is a great way to combat half-court defense. If I force you as an opponent, even if you do get the ball up the floor, if you chew up 9 seconds off the shot clock just before you even get the ball across the timeline, and then the rest of your guys finally get up the court, you're looking at 17 seconds before you actually get into your offensive set. That's not a lot of time for your offense to work. So even doing that can benefit. Yes, there are going to be moments where you might give up. If the other team does a good job handling the break, you might give up a quick one. But if you're creating more opportunities than you're giving up, that only helps you. And I think it also forced Syracuse to play at a tempo that North Carolina is more comfortable playing. That faster up-tempo style of play. So yes, North Carolina got a big win this weekend. They needed it. And Wednesday, big test at home. Big test at home against NC State. I'm looking forward to Wednesday. We'll see what the weather does. Who knows? We'll find out.